Welcome back to Devy Degens. I am your host, Nino Brown, and we are a very special episode by Mr. Devy Deep Dive himself, Brandon Lejeune. How are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I really enjoy, having a podcast of my own. I love being a guest on podcasts.
Well, I
The tables
appreciate
are
that.
turned. So I appreciate the invite. Follow your work on X. I know, I think that one of my favorite takes that you do specifically is you go down to the Senior Bowl, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I can tell all over your face when you got your videos and your one-on-one interviews how much you enjoy that time. So it's a pleasure to be on. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you coming on. And like I said, I respect your work. I'm always watching you and Jason do your player breakdowns and stuff. And I spoke to Jason
Yeah,
down at Mobile, and we were talking
that's
about it. I was
it.
just like, I follow you guys. I just A1 work. I love it.
I
But
appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, we have
we're gonna
fun
get
doing it.
in your bag too. We're gonna be in your bag. This Devy aspect. I know we
Yeah,
spoke in
we're
the green
ready.
room. Tired of the draft stuff. We're gonna get in some fresh meat, quote unquote. Um,
Absolutely.
but like I said, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you're a
No
super
worries.
busy guy. But let's get into the Devy's always going up and down. It's a stock
Mhm.
exchange, right? Whether you're up or
Yep.
down on the guy, depending on where it could be, if he won a roll or if someone else is coming in, whatever it may be. I'm gonna list off some names, and you tell me whether your value on them is up or down right now at the moment.
Okay.
Out of Syracuse, Georgia transfer wide receiver Zed Haynes. What do you feel right now with him?
Well, he was a late pick in a lot of my C2C drafts last year. He's a local kid, by the way. I live outside of Philadelphia, and he's from Fort Washington. So that was one of the reasons I kind of selected him. I mean, him going from Georgia to Syracuse, I'm gonna have to say it's a stock down.
Hmm.
Leaving an SEC program, going to Syracuse, I think is a downgrade. So, yeah, I think he's a long shot to make our Devy roster. I mean, he may be a productive C2C asset, but I'm not sure I see Zed Hayes. I mean, as a like a Devy asset, future NFL potential. But I think he had one catch last year, so I mean, it's too really early to tell. But
Right.
anytime you go from an SEC program to a lower P5 program, it's a little bit of a concern.
No, I agree. At that point, I think when you're doing that, you're just trying to get on the field and get your value back up to where it was when you were coming in out of high
Mhm.
school. Next guy up, freshman, Tennessee wide receiver, Mike Matthews. Where's your value on him right now?
I mean, I think he's got to be a top 6 or 7 wide receiver in the 2027 class. He's like on deck. I've been doing a lot of these freshman profiles
Mhm.
on my YouTube channel, and he's actually the one that I'll be working on the next week or two. So I can't say I've watched a ton of film on him, but the little glimpses that I've seen, he seems like an explosive player. I think he's one of the top recruits of the Tennessee program out of the wide receiver room in almost a decade. So I think they're excited. He's on campus, I believe. And I think, for all these 2027 guys, right, it's the freshman fever, baby. I mean, some of these guys have to hit right now. The last couple wide receivers we've seen, Jalen Hyatt, and I was a Celdrick Tillman guy. They haven't really panned out. I think that offense is kind of wonky too when it comes to producing, technical route runners with the open system. But, nonetheless, if the kid's got talent, the NFL is going to find him.
Yeah, he seemed to early on in the spring game, they seemed to like him. Nico seemed to have a little connection with him. He had a couple big
Mhm.
plays, but like I said, it's pretty much a glorified practice in reality
Yeah,
what a spring game is.
exactly.
So, but yeah,
Exactly.
I'm right with you. I think he can be, top probably 5 to 7 in the class, and whatever happens from there, we'll have to see. But right now, I think that's where his value is at. Uh,
Mhm.
Another guy I was high on, and I heard a lot of people saying, I don't know if he's gonna, where he's gonna fall. He's going to Clemson, blah 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 blah. Wide receiver Bryant Wesco, and at the spring game, he seemed to have a coming out party again. I know it's just a practice, but where's your value on him?
Well, I'm actually probably after this podcast, I'm going to be posting his freshman video on my YouTube channel. So I just got done watching his high school ball, doing some research, and you're right. And in my video, I actually put the clip of the spring game where he had that nice corner pattern, fade pattern. Um, had some wiggle off the line. I don't know why people would be down on Brian Wesco. I mean, probably because of the thin frame. he's 6'2", 170, but I've heard that he's put on weight. He's already put on 10 pounds. And, I think, we got a lot of skinny players like the Troy Franklins of the world.
Right.
And I don't know how anyone could watch his high school film and not be somewhat impressed. I mean, what I really liked from his film was his yards after catch ability. For such a thin guy, I thought he had really good second level vision and can high point the ball, made some nice boundary catches, and had inside outside versatility. So I don't know. I think that wide receiver room at Clemson is kind of stacked a little bit.
Yes.
Antonio Williams has to, come back. I think he was his sophomore year was kind of like a down season for him. We had Tyler Brown emerge, and Adam Randall, I believe, is still there, and stuff like that. And you have a question later on the show sheet. I'm going to save the other name. So I don't know what I didn't watch the high school film and came away with Wesco with like, oh yeah, this guy isn't for me. I think he showed enough traits, and none of us know. I mean, going from high school to college is such a transition. I mean, learning the playbook and the physicality and the speed of the game is so much more so, but I liked what I saw on film.
Yeah, I love that you said for the thin frame though, he goes up there and high points the ball. He has no problem with contested catch. He doesn't have a problem like yard after catch getting. He's not shying away from the tackle for a kid that's not, got that long skinny frame. And he showed it in that spring game. He wasn't afraid of those guys that have already been out there a year or two and did his thing. A lot of people see Clemson. They see Dabo and how they don't really kind of utilize the wide receivers, I guess. But they brought Garrett Riley in there for a reason. And I have a feeling we're about to see a little more of the leash taken off Garrett Riley in this year and letting these wide receivers kind of cook a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I think one of the bigger concerns I think all of us should have with Clemson is Klubnik and his ability to, get the ball to these receivers. He, in that spring game, look just like last season, completely inaccurate and looked like the moment was too big for him, in my opinion. So, but in the end, I mean, they did produce T. Higgins, who is,
right,
arguably a top 5-6 dynasty wide receiver. So again, you got to go off the individual traits. I'm not going to knock someone for the system they're playing in. I mean, if you can get open and you've got the route running chops and the physicality, like I said, the NFL will find you and not hold that against you.
Agreed. All right, let's go on to another guy that I was another fan of. And last year, I feel like he had a little growing up to do and kind of adjusting to it. Oregon wide receiver Jurian Dickey. Where's your value on him right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all probably in the same boat. I mean, I think it was obvious last year. You read the offseason reports. I mean, he just couldn't pick up the playbook, right? And that's unfortunate. And he had to get a little stronger. I think he came in a little maybe not in tip top shape. So again, a high school kid who probably just dominated because he was so much better than the competition. And then he goes to the college and says, oof, this is a whole different ball game. And, sometimes it's good for these freshman receivers and skill position players and really any player on the field. If they're just not ready, you can really damage somebody's, confidence in their ability to play. So I think that's the coach's job to, they held him out last year. I mean, he's got Evan Stewart now. Tez Johnson is another guy I think is, has some appeal. So he's gonna have to fight for targets. But I think obviously, I think it's too early to tell him. He might come out this year. And from everything I've read this spring, he seems like he's a different person after 12 months. So let's see what happens this fall.
That's exactly what I read. The coach has already said he's light years ahead of where he was last season, right? And that he's already kind of teaching the freshmen and new guys coming in a couple of things. That speaks volumes for a kid that was like kind of just shuffled down, the totem pole because he couldn't catch on, and now he's teaching the younger kids. So I think we might get a shot this year, and then we get that 99 on the field and start to get him loose. I think you're going to start to see that value go up.
Yeah, and I think he was an early C2C supplemental draft pick. I mean, last year, so people have shares and they bought high. So
I was one.
and I don't know if I have a share. I might have one or two, but so I think you have to hold at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have to do at this point. You can't sell him for loss right now.
No, no way. Another guy I want to talk about and see what the value is right now is Colorado wide receiver Omarion Miller.
Yeah, Miller, he screwed me, that dude. So he's got a lot of making up to do. Okay. Cause when he played USC last year, I made a highlight film of his, and he, was his first game. He got his hands on the ball.
Hmm.
I think he had 2 touchdowns over 100 yards or something. And I was like, oh man, this guy popped. I mean, that was when it was Colorado was the
Yeah.
craze at the time. And I'm like, oh, look at this guy coming out, just emerging in front of our eyes. And he didn't do shit for the
Nope.
rest of the year. So I don't know. I'm that's not someone you got to show me to believe again. So the inconsistency is worrisome. So if he can't get on the field as a starter this year, I think all bets are off that he's just not a dynasty asset.
And the fact that I feel that they went to the portal and went and attacked the wide receiver room, brought in Shepard, Cordell Russell, like they went and got some legitimate guys.
Yeah, it's even a better point. Yep, that's right.
It's like, is he is he ready? Because that right there for me, the value, as I see the recruits coming in, the value on him started dropping. I'm like, okay, man. He was like an early Bitcoin and just dropped out real
that's
fast.
Right.
One more gentleman, I think he might be kind of flash rising right now. Is that's Alabama wide receiver Gamani Bernard. What are your thoughts on him and where his value's at right now?
Well, I mean, I think he's like a stock that is kind of bounced up after, being in a trial for a while. And all of a sudden they broke the trend line, and he goes from Washington to Alabama and has a couple nice, plays in the spring game, I believe. And Alabama's been looking for wide receivers for a while. Bond is in Texas now. So the wide receiver room, I think, is ripe for the taking. In fact, I think it's been ripe for the taking for the last 2 years, but nobody's emerged. So why not Bernard? I mean, I'm interested to see him. I'll tell you right now, if he starts and he is, getting momentum and making plays the first few weeks of the season, his value is going to go through the roof, because he was waiting behind those 3 other receivers in Washington. So he really didn't have a chance to showcase. I think he still had 400 yards or something.
Yeah, and they had some manufactured plays for him, whether it's screens or whatever it may be, towards the later end of the season. He knew he was going to be the wide receiver one in the ball system, so he was just following the guy, knowing that I'm going to be the one. Okay, you're going to Bama. I'm going with you because you're already familiar with me, and I'm just a plug and play type player. So yeah, I think his stock is going to be absolutely on the rise. I think it's going to just continually rise all season.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if he produces and there's production on his profile, people are going to take notice. Everyone's looking for Alabama wide receivers, and playing in the SEC. You can be successful in the SEC. That's something.
Absolutely. All right, that was the stock exchange rapid fire. Before we get into the body of the show, Brandon, talk to us about your process on how you evaluate wide receivers in Devy.
I guess there's 2 things that I look for. Is really 3 things, I guess. It's first and foremost, it's space creation, right? I really truly believe that the receivers that are going to make it to the NFL are the ones that can create space. And that means creating space like all over the field, right? Not just the short, inside slant guys, but like short, intermediate, and, vertical, who have a well-rounded, skill set that can win in all 3 portions of the field. Now, if they can't win vertically because they don't have the elite speed, then you have to look at, okay, the short and intermediate, space creation, I think, is ultimately the most important, not vertical speed, right? People get hung up on 40 times. I'm not one of those guys that really cares so much about 40 times. To me, it's more about short area quickness and footwork and technique, route running, defensive manipulation. So those short 10, 15-yard routes are the ones that I kind of focus on to see, because I think that's the majority of the routes in the NFL. I know everyone loves the long, deep runs and the deep plays and stuff like that. But, I value kind of where they go from, 0 to 20 in that space. Can they release off the line of scrimmage? Can they, create space? And, that goes in with footwork and defensive manipulation. And the second thing I really value a lot in, and I'm sure if you listen to my podcast, and Jason certainly knows, is physicality. I think that you have to have a certain amount of physicality to, at the catch point. More importantly, getting yak yards. You can learn a lot, I feel like, from a player when they are about ready to get tackled or hit. and guys that either run out of bounds or stay in bounds and fight for every yard, like the yards after contact and stuff like that, I think is like really important. Because I've often thought to myself, if all these guys that get drafted, right, we get excited about 25 wide receivers, and in reality, only 6 or 7 or 8 of them are most likely, going to make it to, consistent dynasty, our rosters. So I say to myself, if they're on an NFL field in practice, there's really only 2 things. 3 things, maybe. The first, the least important, and well, it's important, but if they can't pick up the playbook and know, where to run, right?
Yeah.
But from a physical standpoint, it's either they can't create space in practice, or they don't like the physicality of the game. When they're getting tackled and going for that extra yards and being able to have the physical strength to fight off, hand fighting at the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. So I can't think of any other real reason. Excuse me. Why these guys, so many of these wide receivers flame out on us, because a good bit of them do every year.
Absolutely. There's so many that we have, high value on, and they just don't. I was big on Wan'Dale Robinson. He just kind of didn't make it, right?
Oh, I like him though. Don't give up on Wan'Dale
Yeah,
Robinson.
I know. I think Daniel Jones' problem, that has to be a problem with why
He's pretty good when he came back from that ACL injury. He's a small guy, but I'll tell you, he was tough as nails at Kentucky, and he's a good player.
Yeah,
I like him.
I'm hoping that this is the the 30th pop for him, after everything. But I love that you mentioned just separation, because it's not everybody gets hung up on the cool 40 time like you mentioned, but it's the 10-yard split, it's the 3-cone drill, it's the vertical. That's going to give you that explosive, how fast these guys can get off the line and they can get in and out of their cuts. The gauntlet is big for me as well, because you see how fluid they are in their transitions when they're moving through space. So everybody wants to look at that flashy little number, how quick they can be, but a question for you now: do you value line of scrimmage separation more than top of the route separation, or does it really matter?
It's a good question. I've never been asked that before. I think they're equally important, but I'm going to say most likely, if you can't separate early, then you've got to have the defensive manipulation at the top of the stem to create that 3. I guess if you don't get separation at the line of scrimmage, you still have some guys on your hip, and if you work it right with the the head bobs, the shoulders, and the arm, the whole 9 yards, then you could probably still create space. So to answer your question, I'm going to have to say at the top of the route, because that's the that's where the ball's coming to you. Okay. So at that point, you need to kind of give me 3 or 4 feet to get yourself free.
All right, you ready to break down a couple guys in this Devy realm? It'd be 4 wide receivers in 3 different classes, and we're just going to kind of where your value is on them separately, and then we're going to go pin them against themselves and kind of, I guess you would rank them.
Sure.
All right. So off the rip, the first gentleman that we got up here is Kentucky wide receiver Barion Brown. So what are your thoughts on Barion Brown, and where's your value at right now on him? And then we'll go each guy, and then we'll talk about the whole body of work.
I think Barion Brown I have right now in my ranks as number 13 overall in my Devy wide receiver ranks. So I like him as a player. I mean, he's going to be like a Troy Franklin type, right? He's another guy who's got some decent height, who has on the thinner frame, but he brings a special teams kind of prowess, I think, that teams are going to find. And especially with this special teams change with this kickoff rule in the NFL, I think that might change some things for some players who might not really, be used. There might be teams now, drafting specifically for that play. Right. So, I think there's a lot to like on Barion Brown. I mean, it'd be nice if he had a little bit more consistent wide receiver or a quarterback play. Right. But I like him as a player. I mean, I think he's, plays in the SEC, which I kind of value, highly as well, playing against better competition. So I like what I see.
Yeah. So I think a little bit, it may not be as much in the value point, but this is a young kid that's also learned 2, now going to be 3 different systems in 3 years, right? So when you get to the next level, you're going to already be in a pro-ready offense, and you've went multiple offenses, so it kind of won't really be a scheme fit for you. They've also used him just last year alone multiple times in the backfield, so he's not just being that like deep route runner or just a speed guy, that they're able to use him all over the field. He can play outside, he can play in the slot, and like you said, the special teams factor is great, and he's taken it to the crib multiple times or changed the side of the field for the Wildcats multiple times. So I like his game. Like you said, the quarterback play. It's just been you went from Levis to Leary to now you're going to Vandegrift.
Yeah.
We'll see. At this point, if he does it again this year, he has to be, QB proof, right? Three separate QBs, and he's produced every single season. Does the size matter to you at all? 6'1", but only 166, 167. That's kind of thin.
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning, but so is Troy Franklin. I mean, I don't know. Maybe by the time he goes to the NFL draft, he'll put on 10 more pounds. But yeah, I mean, is it light? Yeah. Is it concerning? Is he going to be a top 6, 7, wide receiver in that draft class? Most likely not. But again, he's, got a certain skill set that I think he's got the speed, he's got the hands, he's got the versatility, like you said, working out of the backfield. It's 6'1". If he's 6'1", he's probably 5'11".
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
I don't know why colleges lie all the time about the height, but it seems to be everyone comes in at least an inch smaller than they really are. I don't know what the game they play is, but hey, I think there's a lot to like about Barry Brown.
Yeah, I like the twitch factor to him. I like his elusiveness. Like I said, I'm a guy. I like if you can win early. So him, he can win very early. Within the first 3 to 4 yards, he can already get behind you, and now you're just chasing this gentleman for the rest of the route. God bless. The next guy up here we're going to talk about is North Carolina State wide receiver Kevin Concepcion. He was a freshman last year, right? He came on, kind of like just emerged and took over. He ended up being, ACC Rookie of the Year. He had 839 yards, 10 touchdowns. But this is another guy that's versatile, right? Because they gave him almost 50 attempts rushing the ball, and he had over 300 yards on the ground. I don't know if he'll have as many targets this year because they have bolstered up that wide receiver room, right? But what's your value on Concepcion, and where do you see him in this group?
I mean, I think I have him ranked. I'm looking at my dashboard where I've got all my ranks, and I've got him number 15. Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, he had a great freshman season. I mean, we talk about all, production, people really get excited about with breakout age. I'm not one who gets really like hung up on those kind of things, but I mean, you have to take notice when somebody, emerges as a freshman, and if they can do it a second season, I think then you have somebody who, consistently is getting the ball in their hands and making plays. But, the versatility, again, we kind of talked with Barry and Brown. He's kind of the same thing. They did a lot of manufactured touches with Kevin Concepcion. So, he was used a lot more around the line of scrimmage, where I felt like Barry and Brown had that vertical play ability. So I'd like to see, Kevin kind of see what they can do a little bit more vertical with him, and get him to be a little bit more well-rounded of a route tree. But I think you have to be really impressed with what he did as a freshman, and I think everyone I think he's probably in the top 20 25 for most people who do this kind of thing, and his sophomore season is going to be important.
I got him right around where you have him. I think I got him at like 13, right around there. I just, you mentioned the route running, and I noticed that as the year went on, he seemed to kind of add a little bit more to the repertoire.
Great.
The deep ball started to come for him towards the end of the year, right? They started, but again, the game plan was to come in with MJ Morris. That all went flat and out the window, and they had to, pretty much start fresh. The kid produced, right?
Yeah,
Didn't matter. New quarterback still got it done. So I want to see now with him not, manufactured touches, just going to this guy consistently. Can he continually produce? I think he can. I think you might see the same amount of touchdowns, but you might not see as much receptions this year with the other gentlemen that are coming in that wide receiver room. All right, the next guy up that I want to talk about is Ohio State wide receiver Connell Tate. Right now, this is a loaded room at Ohio State, and he was able to come in last year and start early ahead of Innis, so he kind of got the jump on him. He ended up with 18 receptions, 264 yards, did score a touchdown. It's right around 15 yards per catch. So the production was there in the limited amount. Again, you had Harrison in front of him, you had Fleming in front of him. So this is kind of his time. Hopefully, we'll talk about the next guy in a little bit. Where's your value on him? And do you think this is the season where he kind of takes the step?
Well, I mean, I think we're all hoping and expecting that to be the case. And if he doesn't, then I think, I think there could be the warning signs going off, right? I mean, Igbokwe is going to be playing. So I'm thinking Cornell Tate, and it's going to be really hard to keep Jeremiah Smith, I think, off the field. Right. So I haven't really looked at a depth chart of Ohio State. So I don't know what it looks like right now. I can only assume that, Tate, I mean, he did get on the field a little bit last year with Harrison going. I read too that they were going to be looking to, maybe putting Buka out wide a little bit more this year. To give him, to give him a little bit more versatility, getting ready for the NFL draft. I read a report on that. So, I mean, I don't know where Carnell Tate lined up last year. It's not somebody that I've watched a lot of. I will this offseason. But again, he's an Ohio State wide receiver.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just the pedigree alone, I think, right now I've got him ranked number 7 right behind Igbuka, with the expectation, anticipation, with that coaching staff, with just, the pipeline right to the NFL. I don't know. I'm expecting big things.
So, like, the Ibuka to the outside, it kind of just blew my mind because I see they had him as the Z, right? So I would have expected, and then they have,
and that's at the outside. That's what I mean. He's not an X receiver. He's not going to play out on the left side a lot. But
right, they had Ballard as the starter as the X receiver, but I don't know if Ballard can fight off Smith for more than maybe 2 weeks. So it would be like at 6'2", 192. I think he's like 195 now. Like I think he can only play outside. I don't think he's a slot guy. That's why Ibuka kind of just dominates the slot with his speed and size. To put him on the outside, I'd be wondering, and maybe they're going to move Ballard to the inside, or maybe Mylan Graham is going to get a little bit of time when Ibuka's on the outside, because I don't see Tate or Smith being a slot guy whatsoever. It'd be a work out of that,
Yeah, I'm not sure. So. I think Ohio State's going to run the shit out of the ball. Personally, I think I have a feeling that we might see kind of a step back with this 1-2 punch they have now with Judkins there, and the quarterback play might be a little erratic this year and inconsistent. So I could see them maybe leaning a little bit towards the run. But in any case, my expectation is Carnell Tate is a starting wide receiver. I don't know where he's going to be starting, but he's on the field for the majority of the time. And if he's not, then again, that is a red flag.
Love it. And the last gentleman I want to talk about is a freshman wide receiver in Miami out of Hollywood, Florida. That's JoJo Trader. His junior year in high school was his breakout season, right? In 13 games, he had 47 receptions, 473 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He was the number 5 ranked receiver in this class. And it seems as though he's become Cam Ward's favorite guy in the spring here outside of Xavier Restrepo. I don't know. It seems as he's going to be on the field as a starter, if not right off the rip within a few weeks. What are your thoughts on JoJo Trader, and where's your value on him right now?
I mean, I'm expecting him to get on the field this year. I mean, Restrepo, like you said, coming out of the slot. I'm a big Jacoby George guy. I thought he flashed pretty nice last year. So I'm expecting him to get on the field. I mean, he's at spring practice. I did one of these freshman videos on my YouTube channel and, put it out there. You go check that out. But we, reviewed his film, and his ball skills and body control are just outstanding. I mean, he's got inside-outside versatility, which is something that's nice. You watch his high school ball. He's playing slot. He's playing outside. That's always nice, that you're not just earmarked to, one side of the field or outside or inside. But I thought he was elusive. He was a space creator. I mean, he's got good yak ability. He's not the fastest wide receiver, but again, I'm not going to get hung up on speed for wide receivers so much. It's all about short area quickness for me. But he stacked defenders real nice. I mean, I liked his high school film a lot. I was impressed, but his deep ball tracking and high point ability and ball skills is what I think is going to make him shine.
Yeah, personally, I also thought his route running ability for coming in out of high school was pretty good. I'm not saying he has an exclusive route tree, but he's probably got at least 5 of them that he can run A plus well. So I liked it. Like I said, 18-year-old kid coming in with a route tree. Kid doesn't have a problem going out there and high pointing the ball. He has no problem going across the middle. You can line him up all over the field. I love his release off the line. I think he has one of the better A steps off the line of scrimmage in this class for these kids in this class. So, that phrase, I kind of don't really like it, but it kind of fits JoJo. He's quick, not fast.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%.
He's quick. His quickness makes him look like he's a little faster than what he really is. So, but I think that there's a big ceiling for JoJo, and I think after this year, this would be a guy that's value could kind of jump up really quickly.
Absolutely.
Right. So those are the 4 main guys that I want to talk about in the show. There's 2 freshmen that everybody kind of popped about in the spring recently. That was obviously Jeremiah Smith and Cam Coleman. But outside of them 2 guys, some incoming freshmen that that you like that you see Devy potential in? Maybe Ryan Williams or Mylan Graham, like I mentioned before. Is there anybody else outside of them guys you think has some potential?
I really like TJ Moore of Clemson. I
Okay.
really do. Again, I did a video on my YouTube channel about him. We broke down his film. He's the other guy that we talked about earlier with Brian Wesco earlier in the show. But again, you want to talk about a guy with ball skills and hands and body control at the catch point. 6'3", 200 something, just under 200 pounds. But I really liked him. I mean, he's ranked fourth in on 24/7 Sports and on 3 he's fourth as well. But he looks like a dominant receiver, and I'll tell you, I put him right behind Jeremiah Smith right after I watched his high school film and what I like. So I really like TJ Moore. I think he could be like the next T Higgins, like the really next good wide receiver to come out of Clemson.
All right, I love it. There's a guy that you talked about body control and catch radius. I didn't put him on the dock, but I'm going to ask about it before we close the show because I have a funny feeling you might have watched a little bit of tape on this gentleman. I think he's got a good chance to be the wide receiver 1 at Texas Tech this year.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on my guy, Micah Hudson?
I mean, what's not to like? I mean,
Right.
it is. I mean, again, you just have to question the program. It's kind of like Luther Burden, right? He goes to Missouri and you're like, like you could probably go anywhere you want, right? But you pick Texas Tech. So I think, I have, I'm not sure if I've done a film review on him yet or not. If not, he'll be in the queue, but I can't say that I watched a ton of film. If I did, I don't recall. So I can't like go on his skill set. But again, he's ranked high, right? So he's going to be one of these guys that are picked in the, early parts of your C2C supplemental drafts. And people are always going to hit those, high top, 10 guys. Let's see what he does with the program. I'm not sure who the quarterback is there. I don't, again, I kind of scout the skill players, so I don't really keep track of all the quarterbacks on those, other kind of football programs, but he should be the dominant figure. I believe I remember reading that he was like the top recruit from Texas Tech, I think ever. I think.
Yes. So, 5-star wide receiver. Like I don't think they've had a 5-star wide receiver ever in the program.
So let me, if anyone from Texas Tech is listening, let me give you some advice. Feed the man the ball. All right. So he came to your program. Okay.
Yeah.
Feed him the ball, showcase his skills. I'm sure he has him being a high school player, but I mean, if he's there, and I'd probably take him. By the time I get into my supplemental drafts, I'll be, I'll have reviewed all these guys. So
yeah, for me with him, it's like he's the type of guy with the catch radius and like the high point skills, and he's not he makes those catches where it's like off target throws or kind of behind him. He makes them look easier, but you kind of it's like, oh, that wasn't really that. Actually, it was a terrible throw. He just made it look effortless. You know what I mean? And his sideline work on the boundary is great. And again, this is 18-year-old kids, and you look at them, and I feel like
absolutely
the way they work is better than some juniors in the game right now.
Yeah, and you pick up a good point when you watch this high school ball. I mean, and especially like the 5 stars, you're expecting them to dominate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you're expecting them to be faster. If they're true athletes and they're going to be a top 5 wide receiver drafted by, the best college programs in the nation, well, they should be dusting everybody. So the high school film's fun to watch, but it can be misleading too, because it is such a big jump. I say it's such a big jump from high school to college, and it's a huge jump from college to the NFL. And only the elite make it, right? So but yeah, I mean, what's not to like? He's a high recruit. Everyone's going to be, until he proves us otherwise, people are going to value him and look for him to be a top wide receiver in the nation.
All right, it was a great episode. Before we close it out, can you give us your top 3 rankings right now
for what?
For wide receiver, your top 3 wide receivers?
Sure. My top 3 wide receivers right now, I've got Tatoria McMillan, Luther Burden, and Jeremiah Smith.
I love it. I've been on a T-Mac. He's been my guy since the minute he stepped a foot in Arizona, and nobody knew who he was. Had no idea who this guy was, and I was like, wait till his QB gets into the starting role. Wait till that happens.
Yeah, he's we talked about, like, when you were asking my wide receiver scouting things, like physicality. Love his ball skills with the ball in his hands. He fights for like every yard. He's got the length. He's got, I don't know. I'm excited about him. It's gonna be great.
He's got those wow factors like Ricky Purcell. come
Yeah, I
across
mean,
the middle. He can do those wild catches. He's got it all.
absolutely. He's. I mean, if there's one knock on him, people are going to be concerned about his slight frame at 6'4", 185, right? So,
Right.
you might be like, but in any case, I think he could be. I'm expecting him to be, a top 3 wide receiver by the time it's all said and done in next year's draft.
I agree. All right. That was a great episode. Brandon, where can the people at home find your work and follow you?
I'm on X sometimes. I'm not a huge X guy, but I'm on there at Devy Deep Dive. Spend the majority of my time on my YouTube channel, which is Devy to Dynasty Football uh, YouTube channel. I've got a podcast that I do with a friend of mine, Jason DiRienzo. It's called the Devy to Dynasty Football Podcast, and I've got a Devy dashboard product that I sell for $25 a year. I always say to the people who reach out to me, buy me a case of a 30 pack of Miller Lite and I'll give you a year subscription. But it's a database of 2025 players, 2026, 2027, NFL draft, potentially dynasty players. And like we love this game of Devy. It's so much fun because you have such a wide variety. The canvas of players is so wide because we have 3 years of players to have fun with and talk about versus just like the rookies and just dynasty people, but yeah, that's, Devy to Dynasty Football Podcast and Devy to Dynasty YouTube channels where I spend my time.
Go check him out. Subscribe. Don't miss anything. He does A1 work. I subscribe. I follow everything he does. He's good stuff. Him and Jason do A1 work as well. I'm Nino Brown. This is Devy Degens, and we're out.